Bhadram karnebi shrnuyama devaha Bhadram pashyemakshabiryajatraha Stirairangaihi tushtuvagam sastanubhihi Vyashema devahitam yadayuhu Svastina Indro Vrdhashravaha Svastina Pusha Vishwavedaha Svastina Starkshyo Arishtanemihi Svastino Brahaspatir Dadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we started out with the cause of the universe. This is a fair question. And as long as the cause of the universe remains elusive and uninquired into, then eventually the person will always return back to that one question. Because if you see yourself as this one individual in this universe who has to do things to be someone, then no matter what you do, you will by definition always be a small person. So what the verses want to show you first is that though you identify yourself with an individual, naturally, you have to first start to expand your identity to something much larger. You are not an isolated, insignificant little speck that doesn't matter. Without you as a physical person, there is no universe at all, because universe is deeply connected to your presence, and your presence is deeply connected to the universe. So firstly, before removing this separation between myself and the whole, I have to look at one quarter at a time. So first we look at the quarter of the physical and we say, okay, fine, I am, not, like this, tiny dot, but there is a larger being that I am an extension of. And I'm also, as a subtle being, as a being of thoughts, a being of ideas, a being of emotions, a being of devotion, I'm also that being that I am an extension of a much bigger being of thoughts and devotion and emotion and ideas and knowledge. And for a time being, I'm just given a small portion of that knowledge, and I use it to the best of my ability, to skills, to make the best of my life that I have, to give the best that I can back into the world. And through that, you grow and you transform. So what the verses say is that you, the real you, who you are, is Turiya. And when Turiya associates itself with the waker, then the waking person becomes you, even though you're much more than the waking person. So that means you become as good as the first quarter. And you only become as good as the physical body, and thus it becomes your life. Like if you just go anywhere, right? It's so real, physical body, and now we have to go to the dentist. Okay, suppose you say, I'm okay, I'm not this physical body, and I'm much more. And then you're on the chair, right, with that injection there, and all your knowledge is like just at a little corner over there. So you see, so it's not kind of, fool ourselves that I'm much bigger than this body. This is why the Upanishad is taking you gently and acknowledging every reality. Physical, there is fear at the physical level. That's okay, because that's what you're given. At the subtle, you cannot be all knowledge. You're small knowledge, and that small knowledge still is able to navigate itself and figure out a lot of things. In fact, you can prove this. There are how many words in the English language or in your local language? Suppose on average 150,000. And yet how many do you use to make deals, to make transactions, to marry, to divorce, to change your life, to eat, to get what you want, to tell people what you want, what matters to you, what doesn't matter to you, to make your life into the greatest thing possible? How many words do you use to make that happen? To make things that really matter. How many words? 2 words? Yes, no. It's probably even possible, right? If the person just keeps saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? So 5,000 words on average. So you see that you don't need to know everything in order to figure out the big picture. You don't need to know every single mantra. There was one time, maybe you were in that time, maybe I was in that time, in fact I should know I was in that time, where there were so many bhajans and so many chants, and I wanted to learn the Rudram, I wanted to learn, all these small verses of every Upanishad, I wanted to memorize everything, and I was never content, because there was always one more verse to memorize. And it becomes so frustrating, you start to feel like a small person. Like, I just want to know these things because it's so beautiful, it's so, it's such a vast tradition. And you start to think like, I need to know all of this, because if the tradition is so vast, then if I know so many things, then I become vaster. And yet you're only becoming vaster where? In one single quarter of reality. So no matter how, even if you become infinitely vast in the waking state, you're only vast 1/4 of the way. In fact, there's so many more states. So it wants to say, relax. You don't need to know everything, just the basics. So these retreats, you see, the Gaudapada Karika and the Mandukya Upanishad, it would take you about 1 year to go through. My job is to go through this in 7 days and still make you see more than you could see in 1 year. So how do I do that? I ask myself this: out of so many ideas, what will you end of the day remember? What will you truly take away in day-to-day life? What will matter to you end of the day most? That's what I focus on. If I focus on all these gods, devatas, and all these Sanskrit words, no one is going to remember that. It all sounds very wonderful and appreciative of the tradition, but no one's going to remember that. So the way to communicate this, if you really want to get to the crux, you just say, okay, what matters to a common man or woman end of the day? Just like out of 120,000 words, what and how many words truly matter to get the job done? And that much you learn. Okay, so we've covered the waking state, the dream state, which will be returned to. Now, what about the third quarter, deep sleep consciousness? Okay, verse 5. Yatra suptaha na kanchana kamam kamayate na kanchana swapnam pashyati tat sushuptam sushuptasthana eki bhuta prajnana ghana eva anandamaya hi anandabuk cheto mukha prajna tratiya padaha. That is the state of deep sleep wherein the sleeper does not entertain any desire for any object of desire and does not see any dream. Okay, that we know. The third quarter is prajna, which means deep sleeper, whose sphere is, deep sleep, in whom all experiences become undifferentiated, who is verily a mass of consciousness. In other words, everything is in potential. Who is full of ananda, happiness, is an experiencer of that happiness, and who is the gate leading to the experience of dreaming and waking. In other words, the sleep leads to the other two states. Okay. So, without even looking at the verses, what do you already know about the deep sleep state? I think we're all experts at that. We already know that there are absence of objects, absence of life, no desires, no fears, nothing to look forward to or not look forward to. There's no possibility to think or to even inquire, who is this person, without any thoughts. Even that one, the inquirer, is not there. There is nothing really to say about deep sleep, and yet there is a teaching about deep sleep. Why? Because deep sleep shows you something important. It shows you that if there is this gap where there is no life, then what comes, according to the verse, it is the gate that leads to the dreaming or waking. So if nothing was there, and then suddenly dreaming and waking came, and dreaming and waking is always populated with a person, with a personality, then what must have been then in that so-called nothing? That personality in potential. Otherwise, from where else could it come from? You cannot have something like an expression come out of nothing. Okay, so here's a question. How do you prove the causal body? Because according to Vedanta, it says every individual has three bodies. The physical body we all know. Doctors, you take that. In fact, it's funny, you don't even know your own physical body. And yet we say, I'm this body, I like my body. Take it over there and fix it. Okay, this we know. The subtle body, this is something that neuroscientists have a problem with, or trouble, I want to say problem, but some trouble, kind of ascertaining. They say if I cannot see it, it doesn't exist. Okay, so what I can see is your neurological behavior. I can see your neurons firing and wiring, and by the totality of that, it somehow produces images in the mind or in the brain. We say no, the brain is physical. Your mind is a different kind of, it's the same order of reality. It is mithya, because it does depend on the other two to be absent. For example, deep sleep displaces your mind. That means your mind does not last forever. And whatever is displaceable, whatever is removable, equals mithya. That means it depends on time to appear. Okay. So the question is, how do I demonstrate that I have something called a causal body? Because I cannot just make a statement and say, you have a causal body. I can say you have a mind, you have thoughts, and I can also say those thoughts are not your brain. Why? Because you can be daydreaming, and I'm knocking on your face. Hello, I can even speak. Hey, come alive, come online. You're somewhere else. That means your mind has gone somewhere else. It's not connected in that moment to the physical body. And thus, though the body is receiving tactile feedback and sounds, the mind is somewhere else. So by that we show the mind thus has to be not stuck to the physical body. And that's why the mind is also able to manufacture its own body and disconnect from the physical body during dream. Okay, so now, if the physical body is there, the subtle body is there, and what's the subtle body made of? How many things? 4, buddhi, manas, chittam, ahamkara. What is ahamkara? Okay, that's a definition, but expand. That's still one word. I want explanations.
One place makes it belong to this body mind.
Okay, over there and not somewhere else. Okay, let's do a little experiment to ensure that we know what ahamkara or I sense is. Have you ever been to a party? Maybe a more kind of professional party, and your friends are there, and you're comfortable with your friends, right? You feel alive, you feel big, you feel confident, you feel outspoken with your friends there, yeah? Because you know your friends, they're giving you a certain sense of safety. So how does the I in that moment claim to be when the friends are around? I am big, I am happy, I am confident, I am big. Now all of your friends, they say, sorry, we have to go, we will return in an hour. And it's a new party, you don't know anyone there, and they all leave. How is your I now? You see that? So the I shifted. That which shifts is not you. That which shifts, that which you say, I was big and now I am shy, that is the ahamkara. So the ahamkara, the I sense, is that which constantly expands and contracts depending upon what your body is associated to, what your mind is associated to, what music is being played, what thoughts are being thought, what feelings are being felt, what sights are being seen, what feedback of the touch is being touched. So that's what shifts and makes you say, I am now feeling so alive, I'm so happy, I like to be here. And then you hear the next lesson, and then it goes over your head. Huh? And now, and you contract. I feel contract. And your friend, hey, how are you feeling right now? Oh, yeah, I feel angry. I feel frustrated. One session later, hey, how are you feeling right now? Oh, this is really good. I feel really good now. You see how the I is constantly changing? Ahamkara, ahamkara, ahamkara. And that I that's changing, that ahamkara, that is called the longest thought you have in the waking state. Even that is a thought. Anything that changes in the waking state is a thought. All other thoughts about things that I saw, they come and go like that constantly. If there's one longest thought that lasts, it's the ahamkara. But even ahamkara can be suspended. How? That's why you have samadhi. Or especially nirvikalpa samadhi. Instantly gone. So even that can be negated in the waking state. And that's what people try to do. Because it's the most wonderful thing. I don't have any any watcher anymore. And that watcher, watching nothing, what's still there? The ahamkara. That's called savikalpa samadhi. When there is savikalpa with ahamkara samadhi, the ahamkara is still there and it's now feeling wonderful. Why? Because the ahamkara is not associated to anything. There's no more life story playing out. There's no life story, you're small. That life story is suspended, and so the ahamkara feels really big. And then somebody says, maybe you hear or smell a pot, with some steam, some food coming through the kitchen, and it gets added to the ahamkara. And immediately it also triggers memories of the past foods you've had. And so all this information gets dumped onto the ahamkara, and once again you say, oh, okay, now I'm observing a smell, a sound, and so on. Now, nirvikalpa samadhi is when even the ahamkara goes away. That is like deep sleep, but you're awake. And you cannot quite say that I was in nirvikalpa samadhi and that I was there, because just like in deep sleep, you can't say that I was there in deep sleep, even though I know I was in deep sleep. But you can't say I was there watching the absence of ahamkara. So that's why nirvikalpa samadhi is not useful, because you cannot learn anything from it. Even the Ramana Maharishi used to say, do not go into nirvikalpa samadhi. He used to spend a lot of time in that, because you don't take any lessons out of it. At least when your ahamkara is there, that's called savikalpa samadhi, then you can observe the absence of thoughts. And that much closer you can appreciate who you really are, your nature. Therefore, even yoga has a certain place, a certain usefulness, but it can become a trap also, like anything. Because a person feels really good without any associations to their life story, so they want to keep on going into samadhis.
To make the picture round, there's also this expression of ego. Is ego ahamkara?
Ego, the word ego,
Ego,
in Latin, yeah. So ego, we used to say ego in Latin, which is I. Now, ego in English has two words. One is pride. This is how we often speak. You have an ego. Or really saying is you have a conceited attitude. You're big. You're putting yourself out there. That's not what Advaita means. What Advaita means when it says ego is your I sense, ahamkara. Okay. So we're not speaking about someone having arrogance or pride. That's vernacular of the culture, but we are speaking of that which localizes your experience here. And you say, it's happening to me over here. Going back to the original question, we've spoken about the waking, the dream. Now comes the deep sleep consciousness. Having read this, okay, my question was, how do you prove the presence of the causal body? Okay, so Suppose you could be awake in deep sleep. This would be kind of cool. You're awake in your deep sleep. And you're in this room of nothing. And you're trying to find something, but there's nothing there. And you cannot find anything that reflects your life. Nothing like your life, nothing like your fears or your desires or your fancies. There's nothing there. You cannot even find your own ignorance there. In fact, all you see is just nothing. So, and then you wake up. And then what comes from that nothing? Because it is a gate to the waking and the dream, isn't it? So what comes after the deep sleep? What comes is a personality. So once again, in that nothing, which I've said already 2 times now, must have been something in there. You just call that potential. Now the second way is, how do you show the presence of a causal body? Because every single day, do you ever predict your reactions and how you're going to respond, or you just respond? Are you like in total control how you're going to respond, how you're going to be as a person, whether you're going to be introverted, extroverted, and in what situation, or it just happens constantly for you? It happens for you. It must thus then mean that there is something about you that is not yours. Like a program running. That means if you put me in the right situation, I will respond, and I will even be surprised how I responded. But I will always respond in the same way, more or less. So that shows me there is a common storage of tendencies, or what we call grooves, samskaras. An easy way to remember samskara is think of a scar, samskara. Now, how do you form a scar? Someone has to do something again and again and again, right? Not once, but many. It's like when you shoe, you don't have a sock, and then you walk and walk, it forms a scar. That means any kind of repetition of any behavior forms a groove. And that groove then becomes your life orientation, which is the kind of person that you are today. There are something or some things that you do on a day-to-day basis. In fact, everything about you is a series of repetitions. If a person could put you out on a table that would say, here's your pattern in this situation, here's your pattern in this, you would just be a series of patterns. And you put those patterns together, which are just repetitions, and you put them together, and that's what you call the person called Andre, a series of patterns that were sculpted or scarred or grooved or etched by the society, by what you did on a daily basis, by your parents, especially in childhood, and especially in even past life. Now, how...
Sorry, does that mean that we don't have a free choice of action?
You do. You do have free will, which can override those grooves. And it's hard. It's very hard to do that. But you can still, nevertheless, do it. Yeah. Now, the third way, how do you know you have a causal body, is everyone is born differently, no doubt, with a different orientation and personality. And those personalities have skills that are unexplainable. They're not genetically passed on because you don't find love for music inside DNA. You don't find it because DNA is just inert atoms. So you cannot find love or attraction for spirituality inside DNA, can you? No. So when a person is born, there is something about you that makes you more oriented towards this and not that. Whereas your sibling is more towards that and not this. It's almost like you're totally opposite. And you cannot explain it. In fact, the Western model doesn't have a way to explain this except to attribute it to great-great-great-grandfather, DNA, and so on. And it's really interesting, isn't it? When you look at your body right now is not only a reflection of the genes of your parents, right? But also of those people who you have never met, called your great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandmother. So they too, 2,000 years ago, it's hard to think about this. 500 years ago, 200 years ago, their genes has now contributed to the genes in your body. Now, do I see my great-great-grandfather? I don't. But using my buddhi, I can infer that it cannot just be my parents to whom these genes belong, because these genes belong to my parents, their genes belong to their parents, and so on. So this science is no problem. Say, yeah, of course, genes are a product of many, many generations. We don't see who they are, but it must be continuation. But here's where the issue is. When it comes to personality, now I have a problem. I can't see that you have lived before. Therefore, you have not lived before. You are born for the first time. But then Vedanta throws an argument and says, show me one thing in this world whose cause-effect relationship only lasts 90 years. Where for the first time ever, it starts, it lasts 90 years, and it just completely ends without any trace whatsoever. Can't do that. Anything you look, father or son, which came first, father or son? It's like silly conversations, chicken or the egg. This is what the Western models throw at you because there's no idea of cyclical creation. It's a first time beginning, and so you have to ask, wow, this is such a philosophical question. Who came first, the father or the son, the chicken or the egg? Neither can you say came first. They were always in a cyclical creation. So your personality, for how long has it existed? There's no beginning. So whatever the personality, whatever some other person has done 20 billion trillion years before in a different, before this Big Bang 3.7 billion years originated, there was your personality, which has now sculpted the person that you are right now. Sometimes it's so hard to think of this. So we have to use these small numbers. The point is, your personality today is not just a product of the person who was born. It is a carryover, which is how you explain these amazing skills and orientations and attractions that people have when they get born. That's the Vedic model. And we're not using mere statements, we're using logic. And the logic is, you cannot find a cause-effect relationship which has a beginning and an end, and that's it. There's always a cause-effect, 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 cause-effect. Your personality now is an effect of what? Of yesterday. Yesterday is an effect of 2 days ago. Da-da-da-da-da-da, like that. And it says no beginning. Thus, these three methods is how we show the causal body. Okay. Causal body also in Vedanta, we say has your punyam and papam. Now this is a little bit new for the Western language. Punyam and papam is simply orientations which make you wise and orientations which make you make mistakes or are not in alignment with what should be done. Think of it like that. So papam is an orientation which you have developed before, like stealing or lying. And thus that orientation now comes forward through your personality. And punyam are those orientations which we have taken the time to reflect and make the best of who you are. For example, generosity, patience, and thus people say, you're such a patient person. You're cool as a cucumber. Why? Because you were cool as a cucumber yesterday, and it took practice, but you were not cool as such some other time ago. Thereby, look at it like this. Suppose that the person keeps on lying to the society and to those people to inflate themselves because they don't feel very confident. So what happens is, we call that, you add a new scar, samskara, to your causal body. And that samskara will now become a groove that will work against you. Why? Because as the person starts to carry themselves with these grooves that I am a non-trustworthy person, how would that reflect back into the world? how will others start to see you? Because people are like radars. And a person, not only would they have a hard time forming connection to others, because they know I cannot be trusted. I don't even trust myself. I'm not a trustworthy person. But that self-esteem will now go outwards, and other people won't trust you because you have papam in your causal body. And when you have punyam in your causal body, same thing. When you work on yourself, when you are trustworthy, when you are giving, you build a certain self-confidence about yourself, and people pick those micro gestures in your body. And they say, I like this person. I cannot explain why, but I like them. Or not even like them, I just trust them. That's not an accident. That's because you worked and you developed those samskaras in your causal body, which is why we say the amount of punyam and papam in the causal body manifests as, in Sanskrit, as sukham and dukkham, as good experiences and those experiences which you wish were different. But the point is, all of them are built, designed through your own actions. Okay, so then it says the causal body is a place of anandamaya. Okay, so what else do we know about deep sleep? Do you look forward to deep sleep or you dread it? Yeah. End of the day, even if you're loaded with, like a drug or something that releases a lot of dopamine, end of the day, all the person wants to do is go to sleep. That means nothing in this world can ever top deep sleep, which is why it's a place of anandamaya. Okay, so why is it that you experience so much joy, or you don't have to call it joy, just contentfulness or ease or comfort or home or warmness? Why is that you do have that experience in sleep? Why do you think? You're not trying to, but it's there.
Because there are no desires.
Yeah, no desire. So what does that then tell about desire? If I have one single desire, a desire, remember that gap between what dissatisfaction means, what suffering means, where I'm at, what my desires are, and what actually is. What actually is Ishvara all the time. But my desire is always to make the world, to make Ishvara better according to my desires. And every time the desire gets thrown out, I create that gap between what is and myself. And thus that's felt as suffering. So in sleep, you have no desires. You're not asking for a better world anymore. You're accepting fully what is. And that's what makes you extremely contentful with sleep. You have no story about how you are and what you are and all the mistakes you have made. You're not thinking about how good you are or how bad you are. You're just fully accepting of that moment of sleep. Nothing to say, total forced acceptance. Therefore, in sleep, there's no second thing to compare yourself against. And that feels wonderful. I am all that is here. No need to compare myself because there's nothing else to threaten me to compare myself against. Once again, that gives you just restfulness, comfort. Thus, it's the place of anandamaya. There's no craving, there's no lust, there's no jealousy, there's no fatigue, there's no sense of failure or sense of success or sense of I should do better. None of this is present in deep sleep. And that's why it feels so restful, because the narratives of the other person to be better than me is gone. There's no one better than me or worse than me. Did you know that you're as good as a dog in deep sleep? And a dog is good as you? Something that's given to all of us. Because you don't know. You only know that I am a person once the waking comes. The dog doesn't know that it's a dog when it's sleeping. Because potential is potential. It's undifferentiated. There's nothing to say about it. So, how far is this causal body away from you? Can you say that the causal body is like somehow stored somewhere far away and it has moments of rapid release for the one day and then it rests over there and it just lets you experience these series of desires for one day? Or wherever there is physical, that's exactly where the subtle, that's exactly where the causal is. There's no distance. We only create these categories to help the mind look at each. And then we say, stop. Do not allow for this causal body to be somewhere away as if it's stored somewhere. Do not allow this organizing intelligence to think that it's somewhere parked away far, far down. Wherever there is mithya, that's exactly where intelligence is. Wherever there is a personality, that's exactly where the causal body is. So, what happens upon death then? What disappears at the time of physical death? The physical body, of course. What continues? The causal body and the subtle body. In fact, death, physical death, for the one who is not enlightened yet, for them death is like a dream. And those who fear that nothing will be there after physical death, for them that's true, because for them there's no subtle body. So for you, as a person who's an atheist, there's nothing after physical death. If I am that person, then I will experience blankness, because there is nothing after, and thus my reality becomes that. There's a nice phrase that says, what you think is what you become. What you believe is how your reality manufactures. So if I believe that my reality is nothing after physical death, that's exactly the experience that I go through, even though the person gets reborn again. So the subtle body continues. Why? Because the subtle body is not subject to death or any kind of physical injury. So what happens? It takes on a new physical body in the light of the punyam and the papam of your causal body. That means the kind of person that you are, in reflection, in correlation with that, that's the kind of physical body that you get. Now this determinant of what gives you the female body, male body, this body, that body, insect body, plant body, it's way complex for us to decipher. But it is one thing that we can know, is that there is no random assignment in this universe. You don't randomly get assigned parents or randomly get assigned certain strengths or weaknesses. It's not a random creation. There's an order to everything. The kind of parents you got is not an accident. The kind of mind that you have right now, or you've always had, as far as you can remember, it's not an accident. There was something that traveler, the subtle body and the causal body, has done while they had a previous physical body, which now makes for you, this person, certain things that are very easy. Some people are born and they have no issues with connecting with this knowledge. You just have to offer it to them. Some, you offer them this knowledge and it's just not clicking. Like, give me something else. Give me chanting. Give me music. And so what does that mean? The mind is still not completely, doesn't have those faculties developed that you might have developed. So.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow about that and the atheists. I think I need a second listening.
You didn't follow what?
About that and the atheists?
Death and?
The atheist.
Atheist. So if you look at NDE experiences, and I read a lot of them, so anything I say I check up first, so I'm not just saying from my own belief system. If you look at the NDE experiences, and you look at their orientations, right, who they are when they had this cardiac arrest or something, then there will be certain categories that they will say. One category is I saw the light, and I was taken somewhere. And by the way, if you get taken somewhere, then in the light of Vedanta, I would be worried because you're still getting taken somewhere. And you don't want to go somewhere, you want to remain right here, right now, because there's nowhere to go. The second orientation is those who die, they say there's nothing. It's just blankness. Now you have to ask yourself then, why is it that some people have just nothing after death and some experience an instant peace, an instant like aliveness, like I'm now more alive than while I was here in the physical body. They literally, like I was more alive in that place, in that svarga that I visited, than I am here on earth. And then you look at those orientations and you say, so while we cannot quite say why people have these experiences, the point is they have an experience. There's a continuation. Now, what is it that continues afterwards? The subtle body. Now, suppose that you do not believe there is something called heaven or something called life after death. Then for you, when that person dies, what will they see? Exactly what they believe. Nothing.
I don't believe that when you're an atheist, you don't, you experience nothing. I can't believe it. Because maybe the first quarter or half an hour, but when all the distractions of the world are gone, then you have to come to that place where you already are right now. But
so, sure. So I'm talking about ND experiences. So what they say is I experienced nothing. So even though you experience nothing, you still come to experience something a few minutes later. So no matter what happens, whether you believe life after death or not, you still go through the same process as everyone else. So it's just in those few moments you say nothing, there was nothing. But Ishvara doesn't care whether you believe in nothing or something, you still go through the same process like everyone else. Okay? The point is, depending on what culture you come from, depending on what you believe, that is who you see. That is one commonality after ND experiences. If I believe in Jesus, my goodness, there are so much Jesuses that they will report. If you believe in Allah, you will say, I saw Allah. If you believe in Krishna or Vishnu, I saw Krishna or Vishnu. So you can see. Why? Because the subtle body carries a certain belief and you see exactly what the reality is for you. Yeah? So, how does this work? Is there any relevance to this? It's fascinating. The point is not to study what happens after death, but to see that death and life, they are both concepts in the waking state. 1/4 of the 4. You even die in the waking state. You get born in the waking state. And then when the person dies, that state becomes real. And they say, reality. This is so much more real than the physical world that I was in. I love my wife. I was so unhappy to leave her. You know, my children, I just wrote a will. And now, you know, I didn't want to leave. I was afraid. And now I'm here and I don't want to go back. I don't want to see her because this place is so much more real. This place feels like home. A moment ago, that felt like home. Now this feels like home. The point is, no matter what experience you go through, that experience will be real for you if you don't have the knowledge. When you have the knowledge, no matter where you are, whoever comes up to me, hey, we are the angels, we want to save you. No, you're mithya. If you look at them as bigger than you, higher than you, and you're a small individual, you continue traveling forever. Always looking, I'm a victim, save me, angels, you know, let's go somewhere. This has a place, but eventually you come to see there is no difference between this individual and Archangel Michael or, you know, Vishnu or Shiva or Ganapati who's going to see, or Saraswati. There's no difference. It's just one organizing intelligence, which to you seems like they are bigger than you. But in actuality, you are not different from them. That's why I said earlier, if you're traveling after death, I would be worried. Oh, please take me. No, leave me alone. I'm improvising. It's not like that, but I'm improvising. Yes, John.
Okay. So far, in the Upanishad, in the Mandukya, we talk about experiential states.
Yeah.
States of experiences.
Yeah.
You talk after that's where I can relate to. I can relate to waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. But I cannot relate to after death. I cannot experience that.
Yeah.
So that's a belief.
Okay, there is near-death experience is still a means of knowledge in some way that you have to address, that you have to look at.
Okay, but then you talk about science. It's not Vedanta, it's science.
Okay, but I'm still using it as a tool to show you that whatever state you're in, it's real for you. That's the point. Yeah. Even if you have drugs and that state is real for you, then this waking state and physical death will become unreal. We're like, physical death is unreal, dream is unreal, this state is real. So no matter how many states we talk about, it will be the same issue. You always compare that state to some other state, and that state will be more real to you than any other state. That's the point. The point is not to show whether there's something after death. The point is just to show you if you're in that state, just as real. But what Mandukya is showing is no matter what state you're in, the fact that it came, that it arose, shows you it cannot be real. So even death is a state. Physical death is a state. It arose. Anything that arises is as good as a waking state. Waking state arises, gone. Dream state arises, gone. Deep sleep arises, gone. Physical death state arises, gone. So-called heaven arises, gone. Drug-induced experience, DMT, Buffo, ayahuasca, call it whatever you want, arises, gone. Anything that arises and you experience oneness, I experienced no, you don't understand. I experienced oneness. It was beyond description. Don't even try to explain. The words don't do justice. The point is, it began. It wasn't there before, and it had to become evident through a means of knowledge. The liquid was a means of knowledge, and it started. But what is that which doesn't need to be announced in the waking, in the dream, in the sleep, nor in the drug-induced experience, nor after death? I. That's the point. Objections?
No question. So to summarize, deep waking, deep sleep, dream state, death, all other experiences are mithya.
Super. Back up. Okay. Now, causal consciousness. Verse 6. Saha sarva ishvaraha, esha sarva jnaha, esha antaryami, esha yoni sarvasya prabhava apyayao hi bhutanam. This one is the Lord of all. This one is the knower of all. This one is the inner controller. Governs all by its intelligence. This one is the source of all. This very one is certainly from whom all beings have come and where they go back. Okay, so in verse 1, we said all that is here is Om. And we said Om is the cause of the universe. Now in verse 6, that same Om here is called Saha Sarva, everything is Ishvaraha. Ishvaraha means the cause of the universe. In other words, all that is here is knowledge in whose presence or by which creates the principle of the physical body, the subtle body, the causal body, creates the principle of the waking state, the dream state and the deep sleep state. One knowledge, one intelligence manufactures three states. And one of those states right now you're experiencing, this one. The one in which this class is happening, one state, manufactured by Ishvara. And without having the means of knowledge, I take this state as ultimately real. However, here it's saying that by this principle, the causal of the universe, the cause of the universe, from it arises all things, including the macrocosm, that means the total, what do we say the total is? The total physical, Vaishvanara, the individual, Vishwa, the total subtle, Hiranyagarbha, the individual, the dreamer, Taijasa, the minuscule causal, the prajna, and the total causal, which is called Ishvara. Now, why do we sometimes call causal body ignorance? We say your causal body is ignorance. Because here we're talking about the total causal, the cause of the universe, the cause from which everything has come. And your causal body is ignorance. Why is that?
Otherwise you wouldn't be here if we had already figured it out.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have this discussion now. I have to ask the question. Because your causal body is a minuscule of the total causal. From the total causal comes the entire universe. It knows how to, it has the potential for birds, for fish, for creatures, for ants, for wind, for space, for fire, for air. What does your causal have? Or how to play piano, how to, whatever, do some electrical engineering. A little bit. So naturally you call your causal body a fraction, which I don't know everything. And so what do I have to do? I have to find out through a means of knowledge. Now, how do you see that everything is the total causal? How do I now find out in this moment here? This is a statement that I'm making. Everything that you see here, including those sounds and the feelings that you're having in your body in this moment about this class, in this second that you're thinking, and those sounds and this silence, how do I show you that all of these differences resolve into one cause? That's what we need to do, because we're going to go out again and we need to have some model to be able to look at this world differently. Otherwise, what's the point? You understand the question? What's the point of just walking out and I still see individual forms? And yet the verse says all that is here is Om. So then how do I reconcile 10,000 different things if there's only one reality in this moment?
They're interdependent and consisting.
In the independence?
No, they're all one system, it's all interdependent, like you showed before.
Yes.
And also there's a consistency. Like if you wake up the same, in the waking world, the story goes on.
Yes, the story goes on. You don't have to keep it imagining it. So there must be some principle that's sustaining the waking state and the dream state, and builds also the possibility of sleep state. That's why we all have it. Did you create these three states? We find ourselves in it. Isn't that true? You get born and you just go through the same states that animals, insects, creatures all go through. What does that show you? There must be a larger design that is not my own, a larger doing that is not my own. So, if we look at anything, we will always find two important things. And this is what you really have to know for this vision to take place. The first is that anything that you ever see, hear, touch, or experience is made of forms within forms within forms within forms within forms. It doesn't matter how many they are constituents of constituents of constituents, made of parts of parts of parts of parts. You only see a few because your mind is programmed to see that. However, let's take, for instance, this typical example. See, if I have like a blue cardboard paper, I can say blue cardboard, okay? So if I take the blue out, can I still have the cardboard? Yes. So the cardboard doesn't really need this adjective. This adjective describes the cardboard. But suppose I have an example here and you say clay pot. So it sounds like the clay here is an adjective describing the pot. What kind of a pot is it? It's a clay pot. But if I take the adjective out of this, then can I still have a pot? No. So thereby, this is a very unique example because though I can describe this, if I try to take away anything out of it, the whole thing falls apart. So what I have to do is I have to reverse the relationship and I have to say it's more like a potty clay than a clay pot. Because it is clay, but what kind of clay is it? It is potty clay. So now if I look at this pot and I say it's functional, it has a design to it, and it's, it serves a function and it's wonderful. And then I say, well, suppose I want to find the clay in this pot. Where will I have to look to find the clay in this pot? Somewhere? Or nowhere? Or just rest and not even ask the question because it's pervaded entirely by the clay. Suppose this pot wants to experience through sadhana the clay, and it thinks it has to chant, right? And to bring this experience of clay into its awareness. And it sits down and it chants. For how long will it be chanting? As long as it genuinely believes that the clay is away from it. How long will it be chanting to experience the clay? Forever. Because the premise, the mere act of chanting to get to the clay presupposes that the clay is away from me. So it's a self-defeating effort. The more I chant to experience the clay, the more I push the clay away. Because I'm presupposing the clay is not here now. So suppose this pot says, I'm tired of looking at the clay. Wherever I go, I cannot find it. I cannot find myself. Its true nature is the clay. I cannot find myself. I'm going to give up finding myself. And then it comes to class, and there's a guru made of the same, right? A smaller guru. And it starts to share the knowledge. And it says, you don't have to do something, Mr. Pot. You don't have to do anything about who you already are. There is a certain reality about you that makes you a little bit chubby, and that's okay. And there's a reality about me that makes me a little bit, smaller. And as long as we look at both of ourselves on the basis of two forms, we will compare each other. We will experience a certain orientation of discomfort and comparison, seeing there are other bigger, more, glamorous pots in this world. So what the student then asked the guru is, then how do I get to this reality? Because I've been looking and I've been meditating on it and I cannot get to it. So what do I do? And the guru says, nothing. And then the pot said, what do you mean nothing? You're not a real teacher. And then the pot moves away because the guru just said you don't have to do anything, and yet there's a genuine seeker who needs some kind of pramana to arrive to the reality. And then the next guru shows up. What does this guru say? Well, you see, there is a reality about you which we acknowledge and we talk about, which is the pot. But there is also a reality about you without which you cannot exist. Wherever there is a thought which is like this pot, what is there? It is the clay there. Now this clay you can compare to intelligence. Wherever there is a thought about this moment right now, it's like a pot. But wherever there is a pot, that's exactly where the clay is. That's exactly where intelligence is. Reshuffling right now in this moment to obtain as the very wind that you feel on your skin, as the very thinker that's now looking at this person, and the very face that's now staring back at you is made of the exact same intelligence. And so when the pot starts to see the world in a different fashion without discarding pots, you need not discard anything. Just see a little bit deeper. Wherever there's a thought, that's where intelligence is. So now, if you look at this spot, can you really find a pot there? No. Oh, now you're catching on. Good. Why not? Because the spot is more clay than a pot. It's nothing but clay taking on the name of a pot. Why? Because it looks like a pot. The moment I chop it up, is it still a pot? No, it's lost something instantly. What has it not lost? It's not lost the substance which was giving it its existence while it was claiming itself proudly to be a pot. And now it's cut in half, and whatever the other half you want to call, still that half continues to say, I am half of what I was. But in actuality, I still am exactly what I was before. And if you now look at this clay, that clay further, you cannot really find clay there, though your eyes are programmed to see the clay. See that? That's fine. My eyes are programmed to see the world. But this clay is just atoms. And this atom is ultimately, as we said last time, is ultimately just probabilities, which has no weight. You can't even see probabilities. And this is just pure science. So that means I can still enjoy the world. I can enjoy this person, this thought. This thought is like this pot. And then next moment, another thought comes, doesn't it? It's smaller. And even your ahamkara, it's like this pot. So what does a person want to do all day? They want to make their ahamkara bigger. I don't want this kind of ahamkara. I want a bigger I sense. I want to make it like that. So I'm going to associate with other pots, with other people, and I'm going to make myself bigger. And all life, a person is spending their time trying to make their thoughts bigger. Beautiful thoughts, devotional thoughts. You see the error? Whether it is a devotional thought or the most miserable thought, what's there? The same substance. Do you see where the wisdom lies between the ignorant and the wise? The ignorant is always trying to make their thoughts more beautiful. They can't stand their thoughts. Why? Because their identity is placed in the pot. I am as good as the pot. What does the wise person know? Whether my thought is like this, and I'm not experiencing the Lord anywhere, or whether my thought is like this, and my life is full of cheer and wonder, what is there? It is one Ishvara obtaining as a thought. Wherever there is a thought, that's exactly where I will find Ishvara, the Lord. So now, if your focus is at the level of the clay, can you truly compare this thought and this thought? If I take out the clay, the substance, then comparison becomes very important. Now my life is all about getting bigger, more beautiful, refining my thoughts, polishing my thoughts, feeling better. What about the discomfort? Who likes discomfort? Interesting. What's wrong with discomfort? That's what I mean. Look at this now. Who likes comfort? Oh. Who likes comfort, huh? Who likes this? Who likes discomfort? No one. You see the error that we make? So we want the spiritual journey to feel good. We want the teaching to make us alive. But Vedanta says, whether you feel alive, it's a pot. Whether you feel dead, it's a pot. Where is the wise person's knowledge? It's on the substance. Wherever there is a feeling, a sensation, an experience of anything, that's exactly where Ishvara is. And the orientation is so strong in a human being that even when they hear this, they say, no, I still want to experience my life as one beautiful journey. I want to feel wonderful. I want to feel big, expansive. Do you see why this journey is not easy for everyone? Why it's not for everyone? Because the people who come to Vedanta sometimes, they're oriented and they want to say, no, I want this to be wonderful. I want to feel great. But wisdom says, my dear, that journey you have to even release. You have to relinquish that journey. That's the journey of a child. That's what children want. Mama, I want milk. I want ice cream. I don't want to feel like this. After the knowledge starts to come and you start to work on this again and again and again, you know what happens? What we call tripti. Tripti is when you couldn't care less whether there's tripti in your life or not. That's what tripti means. Contentment. What is contentment? Is contentment trying to make your pot like this? What is contentment? Where is true contentment? Whether your life is like this, whether your life is like this, that's okay. That's okay. Why? Because where's my focus? On Ishvara, on the intelligence. And doing this on and on and on, I'm okay with whatever happens to my life. Can you see the transition from feeling good, having this devotional service in my life, to whatever is true, that's okay. I do not mind. Otherwise, where would this end? When will you ever have a perfect mind, with a perfect body, with perfect thoughts, with perfect desires, with perfect peace? When will you ever have that? Never. It's a self-defeating journey. Surround yourself with the best mantras ever, with the most greatest music ever. When that music is over, what happens? Back to normal. Where is wisdom? I am okay as I am with every experience, because every experience is only the Lord in this moment. Who am I to say I want better Lord, worse Lord? There is no better Lord, worse Lord. There's only God, only Ishvara here. That becomes the journey. And it's not easy. So that's the first one. The question was, what are the two things to be understood? The first is forms within forms within forms. I appreciate the pot. I treat the pot differently from a plate or something else, but I cognitively break the thing down through my buddhi into intelligence. This we have discussed in the first verse. The second is, every effect that you see, the pot is called an effect. Is the effect ever away from the cause? No. Is your body an effect? Yes. Is it away from the cause? No. So then where do I look for Ishvara? Over there? Where do I not look to find Ishvara?
How can we know that the effect is so close to the cause?
Okay, how do we know that the effect is close to the cause?
Because it could also be like a ball you throw and it's reaching this away.
What I'm talking about is the effect is what you see.
I know.
Yeah. The cause is what makes it up.
I don't see the cause.
You don't see, even if you don't see the cause, it doesn't mean it's not there. I don't see, for example, why I have, for example, shyness issues or, good genes or whatever. I don't see that, but it doesn't mean that the cause is not there.
No, it doesn't mean. But it doesn't also mean that it's there.
It means it must be there, because you cannot find an effect without a cause. If you can, you need to show me an example where you can find something without it being connected to something before. Like if a branch falls down, if a branch falls on the ground, yeah? I know where. If a branch falls down, then though I have not seen the cause, somebody, knocking the branch down, there must be a cause because the branch is on the ground. A story has taken place.
But I can't see it.
It doesn't matter because you were not there.
No, but I want to see it.
I mean, yeah, it would be wonderful to see it, but your eyes can only see this much. So, for example, right now, I'm only looking at this. I do not see if someone trips over, right? And I turn and I see, oh, they're on the ground. I can infer, oh, they must have tripped over, but you saw the cause. Now, whether I infer that they tripped or whether you saw that they tripped, the point is the effect is always connected to the cause.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? Now, you wanted to say something?
So you just mentioned about the cause and effect. There's no gap between the two.
Yeah.
But if you do any physical activity, you know, like what she mentioned about throwing the ball. So throwing is the cause. Effect is it lands at that. So there's a gap.
It doesn't matter there's a gap. The point is the throwing is a product of the cause. Now, what you're saying is, I get it, because I made a statement, the cause is never away from the effect. So that example, it has a different context. I want you to look at the material of anything. For example, your thought. Your thought is an effect. Yeah? Effect means is what you see, is what you experience. But what you experience is a product of brain cells. So the brain cells are there. What you experience is only the effect, but wherever there's an effect, that's exactly where the cause is. Wherever there is a pot, that's exactly where the clay is. Wherever the clay is, that's exactly where the atom is. Wherever the atom is, that's exactly where intelligence is.
So basically what you're trying to say is effect is always preceded by a cause.
The effect is always preceded by the cause. But see, the thing is, even the effect is a cause itself. It becomes a new cause.
Yeah, so it's a continuous.
It's a continuous.
Cause effect.
Cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect, yeah. Like the movement, this is the cause leading to the next, to the next, to the next. And you see a continuous flow of life, but it's actually just frames. If you could slow it down, it would be like one frame, the next frame, the next frame. And then you could see perhaps a beautiful cause-effect relationship. But it happens so quickly that it totally evades us.
If you compare the relation to causal body and subtle and gross body, it's an immediate cause. It's not. There's not a serial event. It's all immediate. No?
So, for example, yeah. So if I'm going to now reply to you, that is the way that Andre replies. And notice how, as this body is replying, how the gestures are now doing that. That's a cause. Now it's like, oh, I didn't plan to do this. It just happened, just by the mere response. So wherever there's a physical, that's where the causal is. Wherever there's an effect, that's where the personality is. Where the personality is, that's where that which gives personality, that's called the causal, is also there. So, two things to note. One, anything that you ever experience is forms within forms within forms within forms. What are your thoughts made of? A bunch of neurons, a bunch of memories, a bunch of impressions, a bunch of attention. Where you put your attention. You put your attention into 5 different things and you say thought. But it's dependent on so many things to come together and say thought. What about the being who you see after death? You know, the angel who you see after death. I'm here to save you. Does forms within forms not apply anymore? Or it applies? It applies also. The reason I'm bringing after death is because some people don't talk about it, number one. And number two, the person tends to attribute some authority somewhere else. Right? There's an authority waiting for me. As long as that becomes true, you become a small being. Because that being after death is just a minuscule in this vast universe, as are you. They might be slightly bigger than you, but they're still a minuscule. And I'm giving authority to minuscule beings. The point is not to give authority, the point is to understand I'm only ever witnessing Ishvara here.
Can I ask you, how would you respond, when we have, when I meet my friends, they say sometimes oh, after all these years of spirituality, you still get angry, you still get frustrated, and then I don't know how to react even, because how can I start to explain that my anger is a different thing than what I used to identify with it?
Right.
So their expectation is for me being so spiritual that all the traits or things we don't want, that they will disappear instead of being accepted as they come. How would you respond when people comment like that? Because that happens a lot and I just don't know what to say. I just say, yeah, so I'm wondering what I know it's their misunderstanding, so I can let it be. Somehow it still triggers me.
It triggers you, yeah. Well, it's first of all, it's useful that it does trigger you. There's something to work with that, to reframe that. Second of all, it doesn't really matter how you respond. I think the default response could be honesty. I'm working on it. But I don't think the answer to that question will really even, matter, because you have to still respond somehow. And if you lie and you say, no, that's just your perception, that's not going to be honest. If you say, no, it's much better, that might be honest. So the question is how to respond. Respond however you respond. But I'll tell you what, when someone says something like that to me becomes the greatest blessing. Every single time, things like that have changed me a lot. Because it makes me really consider my stuff and it gives me motivation to change it. So I'm looking forward to someone saying something like that. You see how you can reframe anything that's seemingly negative into something that becomes empowering? If somebody compliments you, it's like, great, thank you. But if someone tells you something, you're still getting angry. Whoa, now I'm going to really work at this. Now I'm going to go home and pray and, put focus on my anger and reframe and imagine putting myself in these situations and responding differently. And when you have that kind of motivation, change happens. So wonderful that your friends are saying that. Thank God you're getting feedback. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.